and greetings on this beautiful Thursday morning. You are on the Inside Show with none other than Talk with Joan Thursdays. And yes, we have with us lovely people. I am so excited for the topic this morning. We are talking on nursing. Is nursing still a good profession to follow? I don't know, but it's for you to answer. So yes, if you're out there, you know how we roll on a Thursday. In the meantime, you can take out your, your mirrors, and let's talk to the girl that's looking back at us, or that boyfriend looking back at yourself. And my question this morning is, if you are a nurse or in the nursing profession, what will you change? That person looking back at you? What will you change, right? While you have that, I actually want to take the opportunity to thank all the ladies who's on this panel here this morning. We're going to have a good discussion because we have someone in our midst that is not just how can I say?
A staff nurse. Not just a staff
just
nurse.
an ordinary nurse.
Not just an ordinary nurse. Ek wil iets 'n ander woord gesê. Gaan maar nie.
Sy verstaan Afrikaans.
Maar yes, but we have a professor in the studio. Ai man, ons is so geseën, weet julle.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, guys, I'm going to give the opportunity to our ladies, my co-hosts here, just to say hello, guys. How are you doing?
Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm so happy that Joan said to the men as well that they need to make themselves comfortable, because I know that there are some men listening, watching the podcast as well, which I think is a good thing because we have male nurses as well.
Absolutely.
And so I am feeling a bit intimidated by our guest. Just when I heard professor, so then she reassured us she is just Jenny, an ordinary, just down to earth.
Yeah.
Judy. Yes, and so we are in for a very good conversation this morning.
Oh yes, I'm looking forward.
I'm looking forward. I, however, have some concerns about this profession. But join us. I have rooibos tea this morning. Get your coffee.
Yeah, get your coffee, guys.
Get whatever you are going to have and relax and enjoy the show with us.
Well, it does seem like the studio is a bit hot today. And I just have to echo that sentiment. It is not every day that we have a professor in our midst.
Yes.
Very true.
And I know Joan will appreciate this. Een van ons
Jy
man.
onze eie professor.
Ay, man.
I wasn't sure though.
Yeah, this is we only have us, guys.
So it is actually a very proud moment, and I think if you're going to talk about things that are difficult and challenging, how great it is that we do have a professor in our midst. So I think just to have that acknowledgement is also really tremendous. So thank you so much, Professor Judy Bruce. I know we will be referring to each other on a first name basis, but I think it is important just for us to acknowledge that it's a deep sense of, we have a deep sense of pride. And and we're excited to talk about it. It's nice to talk, it's nice to navigate a topic that is both difficult and easy, and we will be very passionate about it. So definitely share and comment. We're interested in what you have to share too.
Yes, and so now we're going to give over to our guest in the studio, our very own Professor Judith Bruce. We're going to give it over to you. If you can just tell us a little bit more about yourself, where did you study, and stuff like that. You married, you're not married, you available, you're not available. Hi, guys, sorry.
I'm available in other ways. Good morning, all. My name's Judy Bruce, and I want to thank the pastors for the opportunity to be here today. And I'm really excited because nursing gets such little exposure.
Absolutely.
Not just in terms of the public, but in the media. So I really am appreciative of this opportunity. So I said to Lee earlier on, I didn't choose nursing. Nursing chose me.
Wow.
And if that is perhaps preemptive of a calling, then that is exactly where I am.
Wow, that's awesome.
So I was born in Namaqualand. I grew up there for my first formative years. And as parents often do, they want to give you the best education. So I was shipped off to Cape Town to go and study there. And when I was in my matric year, like many youngsters, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was very interested in health. The human body particularly fascinated me, and I wanted to know more, and whether I was going to be a scientist or something, but I wanted to be in health.
Right.
So off I went and applied to UCT to do physiotherapy.
Wow.
And of course, for reasons we won't go into, UCT just said no. And then 3 of my friends in class said, listen, I hear we can do nursing. Let's just try this. And so I just tootled along with my friends and went to register at UWC and did my degree in nursing.
Wow.
Great.
But I must tell you, from day one, the first day, my body was aching, my feet were so sore, but I knew I had made the right choice. Because just the gratitude in the eyes of the patients and the little bit of difference you make as a first-year student nurse was very rewarding for me. So I must say, then I knew. But along my journey, I often needed affirmation.
Right.
Because it wasn't my choice.
Yes.
And my parents, you can imagine, my parents said, what, nursing? They were not devastated, and not to speak down to nursing. They just felt I didn't have the makeup to be a nurse because I was a very sickly child. I would faint at the sight of blood. I never liked nurses. I was petrified of the school nurses.
Wow.
And so they couldn't match my choice with how I was as a child.
Yeah. Well, that is fair.
Yes.
And I must tell you, the first time we worked on a cadaver, many of the girls in the first year class fainted, and I was the only one who stood up. So that also made me feel stronger to do that.
Yes.
Nonetheless, a long story short, I studied at UWC during very, very turbulent times. And so my studies were interrupted quite on many occasions. The first time was in 1973, and I think very few people appreciate the role of UWC and its students at the time in the struggle.
Yeah.
The
political struggle.
Yeah.
So we were all expelled. By mid-year, we had protested for a variety of reasons, predominantly against Afrikaans as a medium of instruction, but also the facilities. We were in these hot prefab buildings, and things were just not ideal. And so the rector at the time, who was white, didn't like us, what we were saying and what we were stood for, and expelled us all. And the condition was that you had to reapply to return to UWC. So that was obstacle number 1, but we carried on. Then 76, as you all know, was the big thing. Many of our students left. Out of a class of 24, only 6 of us qualified. Derek, my husband, who I met at UWC, was one of those many, many students who couldn't finish their studies at the time.
Why was that?
The riots.
Because of the riots and the
the
uprising in the country
uprising,
at the time.
So they just they quote?
Yeah, the universities, all education institutions were shut
Yeah, I
down.
remember
You
that.
remember
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
And so while things were rising up in Soweto, there was the epicenter was UWC, and there was a lot of our student leaders were incarcerated, detained. So it was turbulent times, and it was tough. And like I said, many of my nursing colleges fell by the wayside. Derek and I got married, and that's why I ended up in Johannesburg. And I worked at Coronation Hospital for a few years.
Wow.
And I must say that I attribute my journey as an academic and ultimately becoming a professor to 3 very formidable women, matrons at Coronation Hospital, who gave me the opportunity to study full-time at Wits towards my postgraduate diploma in nursing education.
Wow.
So that was the beginning of
so
my
beautiful.
academic journey. So I really want to pay tribute to them. I had just had a newborn baby, so I was a full-time student, and it was difficult. But I went ahead. I finished my diploma, taught at the nursing college for 13 years, got a position at WITS, became the head of nursing, became the head of the School of Therapeutic Sciences, and I eventually retired as the assistant dean for teaching and learning at WITS University. So during that other half of my life as a nursing academic, I then obtained my professorship in nursing. So here I am.
That's a journey,
That's
eh?
a 50-year journey in 5
Yes,
minutes.
a day.
I
awesome.
enjoyed the ride.
Yes.
Me too. I really did, because it's very interesting to understand,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
journey,
Yeah.
and to know that you're not a fly by night. You know exactly what you've studied for it. Do the people still study? Does nurses still go and study at a college or whatever?
So that's a very important question, and almost strange in the sense that while I think students who leave school know that they have to study to become nurses, many of the public, or quite a significant sector of the public, still don't know that nurses do actually have to engage in formal study. So you can study at a nursing college, and you can do a 3-year diploma in general nursing. That's now the new course, or a 1-year certificate course, and that is the nursing auxiliary. You can do a 4-year degree at a university, and almost all universities in our country offer the 4-year bachelor's degree in nursing.
Oh yeah.
And that is an important trend globally, because professional nurses, they also the pipeline to specialization. So you have to be a professional or registered nurse to specialize in nursing. And there's been lots of research that showed that if a hospital or a clinic appoints nurses who are well qualified, and preferably at bachelor's degree level, it does improve the health outcomes for patients, reduce hospital costs. So there are many things that can be attributed to the quality of education that nurses receive. And yet, many sectors of government still don't believe that, despite the evidence.
Yeah, because I just wanted to say, I know I've asked, at this thingy that we were, this hospital here, Rand, is it Rand?
Rand,
What is
this? South Rand.
South Rand.
Oh,
South Rand Hospital.
Yes. The
Right.
public hospital.
Yes. So the nurse I spoke to actually didn't even understand, because she didn't go to a college. She didn't study. So I think she's doing on-the-job training per se. So how do we perceive that? How do you understand that?
Yeah, I think, and thank you for pointing that out, because more and more hospitals tend to appoint carers. And
So
they
there's
put carers in uniform,
Oh,
and
yes.
then you become confused.
That's
as to,
right.
are these really nurses who've undergone training, even a 1-year training course? Or are they carers? Because our community carers, unfortunately, are not regulated. There isn't a body that regulates them and prescribes what they can and cannot do.
Oh.
Yeah, and that raises a very important thing, because of the landscape of different nurses. So we find that people had an impression of nurses, and they stood out as very respectful, and it was an industry that was quite not sought after, but it was very respected.
Yes.
Almost
Yes.
like a teacher. A teacher carried a certain weight because they carried a certain decorum, and so you see that perhaps the environments that the medical institutions have created have caused this almost reputational damage that nurses have begun to face. Because that's a very valid thing that you point out, that there can be volunteers or carers or social workers, and you can perceive them as nurses. You're not getting the same care, and so now we say all nurses look like a certain thing.
Yeah, I never knew that, to be quite honest with you. It's the first time I hear that they are actually carers.
Yeah.
I didn't know that's the case, to be quite honest with you. I want to sketch a scenario, and I don't know, we didn't do the the
mirror
mirror,
we
because
kind
I
of-
am so interested in what. But let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go there. Let's go there. What will you change by if you are a nurse? What will you change in
Today's.
the nursing profession per se?
For me, I think it's that the passion for the profession. I think it's evident when we go to hospitals nowadays, that we see the lack of a passion for the job, or love for the job, which leads to the fact that, in my personal opinion, we don't get the proper services that we need, or the care that we need. Because, like my colleagues here said, previously we knew the nursing profession to be, something that one could look up to. If I think-
Sophisticated, yeah.
sophisticated,
Very
very
like,
professional. If I think of the olden days where they had that white uniforms, that, and it looked so
And
neat.
looked so smart,
Looked so
yeah.
smart. And nowadays it's like almost like a don't. I'm sorry if I'm not. I don't
It's
want
okay.
to knock down the profession, but it's like a don't care attitude, which I would love to change. And maybe that's just my perception, but I've spoken to a doctor in particular, and the doctor also said to me, it's sad that at one particular hospital also here in Johannesburg, one can just see how the standard
yeah,
of
dropped
care
tremendously.
has dropped. And,
Yeah, it did.
this person was also saying that, we need to think of our own families. I'm thinking if my family
Oh,
gets
guys,
ill, what would I have wanted? And don't the professionals, the nurses, the caregivers, don't they think of that? That it could be their own family members, of the way they treat it. So that's what I would like to change because
What would
of
you
my
say?
experience.
I think nurses should wear yellow.
I think orange, because it will make them happy.
Yes, yes.
The nursing profession. I think I would really like to see nurses stand in the kind of prestige that they once stood in, and I think maybe gaining more understanding about the different dynamics that nurses themselves are going through. Is that maybe I think I'd want to care for nurses better.
Okay.
Because
Okay,
yeah.
So
Because
like
a
more,
carer should always receive care.
yeah,
in a way.
more salary.
So true.
Yes, and the
Yeah.
industry
Yeah,
should
make
perhaps
them
be
happy.
protected,
Yes.
in a way that this is a
Yeah.
very fundamentally
Yeah.
important part of
Absolutely
caring.
so.
Let us look at this industry, let us build them up, let
Yeah.
us kind of reestablish
Yeah.
them to
Yeah.
flourish. Let us
Yeah.
set them up to flourish. That's what I would do.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think I will also go in that same direction. But I would love to change the conditions,
Yeah.
at the hospitals, specifically when it comes to the nurses, and make them more jolly, more to want to do what they are doing.
Yes.
Because sometimes the passion's there, but the environment's not so nice, or the conditions in the hospital is not so nice. Make the conditions more
Conducive,
for the profession, for the nurses per se. Have nice things for them, and also then get more beds. Don't let people be in the hallways.
More nurses.
Get more nurses.
More
Get more nurses.
resources.
More bachelor
Yeah,
nurses.
because I think the resources is actually the actual thing that I think's lacking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe
So
we
that
can
is-
spiral into. I know that Judy still has to answer that question. What would you do for the nursing profession?
So unfortunately, there isn't just one single thing, and I think you ladies have touched on everything that is important. But I do think the decision makers and the policy makers around nursing need to change.
Yeah.
And that's not going to be the biggest solution, the problem solver. But I do think if you have somebody of influence, and that really can exert the pressure on the purse, the pressure on the resources, the pressure on the policies, because nurses have such little say in policy. There's just an expectation that
Yeah.
nurses must implement policy. We can't critique and we can't develop policies. So together with all of, because you can't change working conditions without the political will
Yeah.
and without the resources
Yeah.
and without any strategic direction for nursing and nurses. So I mean, things. So I did say earlier on, we need a minister of health
Yeah.
Yeah.
who's a nurse of influence.
Absolutely so. I was thinking that on my way, right?
We've only had ministers of health who are doctors, and with due respect to my medical colleagues, including my daughter who's a doctor, I still don't think that doctors get it. That doctors get the importance of nurses, the modern day doctors, the importance of nurses and nursing, and maybe we are to blame as nurses because we don't stand our ground.
That's right.
In the hospitals, in the clinics, we don't see doctors as peers.
Yeah. It's a
You know, we still
partnership.
have this handmaiden notion. You work hand in glove with the doctor, with other members of the health team to ensure the best outcomes for your patients.
Yeah,
I mean, I've
it's
seen
definitely a partnership that needs to be refined.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, in my day, and gee, you know, a lot of people will say, you old ones must move on, and so
Yeah.
us young, and they're already saying that.
Yeah.
We worked hand in glove with doctors.
That's
we were
right.
on the ward rounds
That's right.
together because you are the one
That's
who's
correct,
seen
yes.
the up and down, the progress and the
Yes.
regression in
Yeah.
patients. And you are integral to that patient's recovery and health journey.
Yeah. No, I think that's so pertinent, and I think you pick up and raise on two very important things. I think because your training and your education was also forged in struggle, you'll always have a voice for those kind of disenfranchised or dwindling voices. So I think that's an important thing to bear in mind. And I think nurses innately, I mean, there's a saying that says to care is to have courage.
Yeah.
And that is essentially true
Yeah.
about nurses.
Yeah.
They care and they are bold in what they do all the time. So I think a voice, and you made a note of this, and it is important to have an influential voice.
Yeah.
Will be instrumental in changing the dynamics for nurses.
And I think also in that, I think then it's vital, to have the policymakers and get some nurses of influence in the to have a say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there is a say. I think Judy's
In
also
the
involved
policy.
in a group or a coordinated organization that tries to speak into that. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah.
Yes, I belong to several. That's why I say I'm available in other ways.
Right.
A group started by Sister Terry Besson a few years ago called the Exceptional Nurse Campaign, and what we did was to try and get this groundswell of people, interested individuals, to help change not only the image of nurses, but also to drive home the importance of nurses in the health system. And the founding members were Terry, myself, so we were the only nurses, a business person, and also an intensivist, a doctor, at the Tygerberg Hospital. And the four of us did a variety of things. We would raise awareness about nursing and nurses with the South African Nursing Council, with the Department of Health. We were running conferences for nurse leadership. We had night runs in the major cities in South Africa for 5 years now. In Joburg, it didn't do so well, because can you imagine a night run in Joburg?
Yeah.
Goodness.
Nonetheless, it was about awareness, and
Yeah.
the funds that we raised from those activities were for marginalized nurses of exceptional character. So the word exceptional had to be in when we selected nurses for some financial support.
Wow.
And you know, I work with a variety of organizations just to profile nursing and just to keep advocating for nurses and nursing.
Yeah.
That's
And I
awesome.
just find that nurses themselves do too few of those instances where you can actually speak up for nursing and advocate for your patients, for goodness sake, you know.
But if
Nursing
nurses
is
can't
so-
even go to their managers, the
Yeah.
people above them, you know what I'm saying? If they can't even talk to them if there's a problem, because they
Exactly.
are linked with maybe the minister or so. That's how it is. People, the nurses themselves can't even raise a problem, that
Wow.
that they are going
That's
through.
sad.
You know what I'm saying? That's actually very sad, and I think that's the unhappiness that
we
nurses
experience.
are experiencing right
Yes,
now.
yes.
You know what I'm saying? So I think that also
Yeah,
needs to
absolutely.
needs to come right. So nurses can stand up, but how do they stand up?
Yeah.
You know, and that is why I think with I pray that the Lord will help you with this team to see, because you were there.
Yeah.
You actually know what is happening.
And you
Yeah.
could see the deterioration
Yes,
Yeah.
over a
yes.
50-year period.
Sure.
It's devastating.
It's
I think.
major.
Yeah.
If I can just pick up on the welfare issues, I think that is so huge. I'm going to just use the word welfare
Yeah.
to as a term to encompass so many aspects of caring for nurses.
Yeah.
The work environment has become dire. I mean, can you
Ooh,
imagine you're a carpenter and you don't have a
Yeah,
hammer
yeah,
for
yeah,
the
yeah,
nail.
yeah.
The
Yes.
tools of the
Yes.
trade, the
Yeah.
resources. We don't have linen for
Yes.
patients. There's just so many things lacking. But nurses themselves have lost the care and the
Compassion,
and the
the
compassion,
empathy.
and the employers likewise
Yes.
have lost that, and I'm really generalizing here, that ability to care and look after the welfare of their nurses. If there isn't even a place where a nurse can go and sit
Sit
during a
and eat.
lunchtime, put up her
Amen.
feet,
Yes.
interact with her colleagues, debrief, those are things that we used to do.
Absolutely.
What is happening to our nurses' residences? Ask me what's
But
happening.
what's happening to it?
It's used for all sorts of purposes and not for the betterment and the interest of nurses.
Yeah.
And so even that where you would be able to accommodate nurses because of the nature of their work and the hours that they work
Yeah.
Yeah.
is no longer there. So think of the nurse who has to travel from Soweto to Sandton.
Yes.
The ungodly hours she has to
Yes.
Yeah.
get to work, and then we complain or we skinner about nurses who sit and eat
That's right.
at
Yes.
7:00
That's
because
right.
they've had to get up at 4.
That's right.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, so those welfare issues have gone.
Yeah.
So and I'm not surprised that many of our nurses experience what we call compassion fatigue.
That's right.
Yeah.
They just
That's right.
you know they just
Burnt
run
out
out of
nurses,
steam
yeah.
to care.
Yeah.
No, that is true. I
And
think,
it's not an excuse.
yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah,
you see the environment that they are in also doesn't lend, like you say,
Yeah.
it doesn't lend to
Yeah.
the success of what they do.
Yeah.
And
I
I think
just-
many of those things were undermined as needs.
Yeah.
One would think that it's just a residence, it's just a this, it's just a mentor,
Absolutely.
it's just
Yeah.
an apprentice, but it's not. And I think you also touched on something. It's like it's a general issue probably in South Africa right now. You know, because the work environment is tough, and
Yeah.
we see how the political arena has influenced the industries and professions like nursing, and we see the
Yeah.
results of that. And I think it does. There's a long. We go a long way when we understand some of the root issues, because what people get are the symptomatic. Experiences.
Yeah.
We complain about the nurses that are a
Yeah.
certain way,
Yes.
but in delving deeper, you
So
gain a
true.
better understanding of
Yes.
like
That's true, no?
okay,
Yeah.
the structure is
very
getting
true.
Yeah.
complicated.
Yes.
The care isn't there, the welfare isn't there,
Right.
the resource isn't there, and there's no motivation for
Yeah, absolutely none.
the profession as a
Yeah.
as a growing profession. You wanted to say something,
No,
Vi,
no,
and
I
then I
think-
wanted to just pop into the training of nurses.
Okay. Before you get, into the training, I was just going to, what we just realized now was the lack of
Of
profession,
care.
of the care
Yeah,
and
the
so on.
care of nurses.
But I wanted to tap into what you mentioned earlier about the advocacy
Yeah.
that you are doing. So I remember years ago, you will also remember when we, in the teaching profession, the inspectors would come
Yes.
to the schools
That's correct, yes.
to advocate
That's
for the
right.
profession.
That's right.
Do you think there's a need for you guys to go back to that, to go back to the schools and advocate,
Yeah.
at the schools
Yes.
for the profession, and so that they can have? I don't hear children making a choice. I don't
No,
know if
they
you
don't.
guys-
No,
No,
I
no.
haven't
Of
heard someone
becoming
in a long
nurses,
time
not-
saying,
I
I would
don't
love
think
to be a
so.
nurse.
Yes, I haven't
Yeah.
heard of somebody becoming a nurse.
Yeah, yeah, and I really want to encourage young people to think And we can talk about what nursing actually gives you.
Yes.
Apart from the personal, the internal rewards, there's a lot that people can do. But coming back to your point, I'm not understanding you talking about going to schools.
You know, as a
Yeah.
group, like creating awareness, the advocacy
Yes.
to the high
To add
schools, to
voice
the
for them.
matriculants, and saying,
For nurses.
guys,
So we
for
do
nurses,
that.
yeah.
So we
Oh,
do
you
that.
do that.
I'm just not sure to what extent.
Yeah.
I'm really speaking from my own institutional viewpoint. We do that. And
Yeah.
there was a time that we even went to different provinces, particularly provinces where there were no universities, like in Mpumalanga.
Yeah.
And showcase
Yeah.
what nurses do,
Good.
the requirements to become a
Yes.
nurse. But of course, it's all within the health sciences. So it's not just nursing, but nursing is part of the team.
Right.
So maybe there's less of that happening now,
Yeah.
but it is being done. And I'm not sure to what extent career guidance is still a thing at
Yes,
schools,
yes.
because that's also where things need to happen and where schools can invite nurses to come and
Yeah.
speak
Yeah.
to the learners.
Now, seeing that nursing is the heartbeat of healthcare,
Yes.
right? What is it that we can actually do from outside nursing? I'm now talking maybe companies, maybe churches, maybe whatever. What is it that you think from the outside people can do to actually help?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because we're actually looking for solutions here. Because we can see that there's a problem.
Yeah.
We actually, it's so visible that I myself pray, Lord, let me never get sick
Yeah.
to land up in a
Which is
hospital.
so sad. Yeah.
It's sad. It's extremely sad.
Every person once in their lifetime will need a nurse.
That's correct.
And in order for us to really understand the impact of that, we have to get communities behind nursing. And this exceptional nurse campaign that I talked about is driven by the Baptist Church. And so if we can get a groundswell, look, we've also encountered difficulties, so much so that I stood back because I felt so fatigued by the pressure, the burden of carrying nursing on my shoulders that I had to step back. That wasn't compassion
Right.
fatigue, it was just fatigue.
Right, right.
So, but the principle is to get community behind, because nurses by nature,
That's right, yes.
they're community people, but they also, because I think for the majority of nurses, it's altruistic, it's selfless. As long as you can make a difference to someone's life, you don't want any material reward for that. Generally, I mean, today it's different because people come do nursing because it's a job.
Yes.
Right?
That's right, yes.
But communities must understand that nurses are central to their health.
That's
I
right.
mean, how many people who are chronically ill are in communities, not in hospitals?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you need to be behind nurses, and we would really, and I hope I'm speaking on behalf of all nurses, get communities behind you, not against you.
Yes.
I mean, how many nurses have been assaulted, maybe sometimes
that's true.
due to their own inaction
That's
or
right.
certain
Yeah,
actions.
right.
But that you don't lift a hand to a nurse who's trying to help or is also a victim of circumstances because there are no resources. How do you run a clinic? How can you open a clinic when there are no resources?
And yes, you find...
When there's no water, no
Yeah.
electricity.
Yeah, and also you find, because you said, and I just want to elaborate on that.
Please don't confess that you've assaulted a nurse.
No. You find nurses. Not all nurses have the compassion. Not all nurses are there because they want to help the patient.
Yes.
They're there for a job.
Yeah.
Right? So I've seen it, to be quite honest, because you do hospital visitation, you see certain things, and many times I felt like, see if I can rip you now or just give you a slap, to be quite honest with you, because you're now really rude to this patient who can't help herself. You know what I'm saying? Don't talk about elderly people. They treat them like they are nothing, to be quite honest. I've seen it. and that's why I'm mentioning it.
Yeah.
So it's not all nurses
Yeah.
who is like that, but you do find nurses who just come there because they want a job.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, they don't know anything. They didn't do matric per se, because that's what it is. That's the reality of what is happening in South Africa.
Yeah.
You know, just because of it's a job. So I'm gonna take this
Yeah,
job.
no, I hear you.
So
You
that
don't want a default nurse.
No, you
like
don't.
I
You
had
don't
nothing else to
want
do with
that.
my
You
life,
don't
and now
want
I'm
that.
nursing. Yeah.
and that is why I think it's important then for us as the community to try and do something. Have maybe if the hospitals allow it, to have like in the morning a worship session early with them, just encouragement,
Okay.
just a thank you,
to
a
raise the morale.
gratitude,
Yeah.
just to
Yeah.
just to lift them a little
lift
bit,
them.
so that they can have a lekker day. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And people have done that. People have done that, particularly during COVID. It was
Yeah.
very prevalent, because I'm sure all the three of you can appreciate that
Yeah.
if nurses were ever profiled and at the front line, and
Yes,
people
that's
appreciated
a fact.
it was the nurses.
Yes.
That's right.
There are anecdotes of nurses telling stories about other health professionals who would not even come near the patient. But
That's
who was
right.
near, who was the closest?
The nurse.
It was the nurse. And I must say that during that time, there were lots of community groupings
Yes.
that actually did that. But, now COVID is
That's
gone, and
right,
now
yeah.
we're back to our
Back to, yeah.
same old habits.
But is there a difference between the nurses at the public hospitals and the ones at the private hospitals?
I think that it's like it's an industry question. I don't think the nurses are different, but I did want to also raise the fact that
Do you know what I'm
healthcare
trying to
or
s-
nurses, it's a different experience.
Yeah.
And from an end user experience, it's also different,
Yeah.
because the reason why you don't go to public hospitals, if
Yeah.
you are fortunate enough to make that decision for yourself, is because the services are different.
Yeah.
So you do find that the dynamics in the private care and the dynamics
Yes,
in the
it's
public
much-
would be
Yeah.
different.
It's very
driven
different.
by
It is,
different
yeah. It
motives.
is.
Yeah.
But just a simple answer, they're the same. I think there are fewer, let me not commit to that. But I think because the private sector also trains their own nurses, but remember they all fall under the same accreditation system, the same council.
Okay.
The standards are expected to be the same, so there's
Yeah.
no doubt about the standards. But the private sector also trains their own nurses. They have their own nursing schools, and I remember Richard Friedland crying out to the nursing council to say, you've cut our ability to train by 1/3. So you can imagine the impact that that's going to have on their ability to run quality services. So many of their own nurses take up positions in the private sector. So the level of education is the same.
Yeah.
But the one thing that the private sector is not yet doing is to train degrees and the professional nurses, because that would need another process of accreditation with higher education.
That's
And also the
interesting, because one would-
environment is different.
One would
Yeah.
have thought
Because
that the private
it's
care,
different.
Yeah, one would
Yeah.
have thought that the private care would hold a higher standard because they are paid differently and
Yeah.
subject
They
to greater
get
more
rules and
money,
regulation.
yeah.
Or
Yeah.
two, or
Yeah.
two.
Yes.
But I mean, I've seen, and I'm not blaming particular hospitals or hospital groups, but I've already seen in units where in intensive care units, where
Yeah.
you have to have an intensive care qualified nurse.
Okay.
That is not happening
Right.
to the extent it should in the private sector.
Goodness.
If you speak to the CEO at Charlotte, she will tell you, I cannot open one of my ICUs because I don't have a ICU nurses.
Yeah.
So the system, the
Sure.
health system,
It's actually
will
failing
collapse.
us, right?
Yes.
will collapse if we do not have the
Right, my
correct
sis.
number and quality of nurses.
That's
the
actually
extent.
sad.
Yeah.
Very
That's
sad.
very,
Oh, it's
very
scary,
sad.
but it also alerts
It's
us to the fact
scary.
that it's a very serious issue to pick
It
up
is.
on.
Very
It's
serious.
extremely
It is.
serious.
It is.
Also, you know what also happens in the public hospitals,
Yeah.
I see, it's the influx of foreigners. And there's
In-
what,
as
when my
patients or
sister,
as,
as
staff?
patients,
No,
as
patients.
patients,
Both.
as
Patients and as, yeah.
because come I tell you why I say
Nurses.
this. My sister was very ill, and she went to a public hospital. She slept in the corridor for 2 nights. Right? Sat on those hard
Cheers, yeah.
benches,
Yeah,
those,
water
those
benches.
wooden
The
benches,
wooden benches.
right? I came there. She was so scared for me to actually talk. She told me,
Yeah.
please, don't say anything. Please don't say anything.
Because you'll be victimized.
This also happened to my son-in-law's granny at another hospital.
Yeah.
Where she also asked me, because I'm the type of person, I'm going to ask questions. That's just who I am. I'm going to ask, but now why? So I asked this one nurse, she was a sister, because one of the nurses referred me to her. And I went and I asked her, so why is my sister sleeping or sitting up for 2 nights on a hard bench? And you just tell me there's no beds.
Yeah.
When will there be a bed available for a woman that is sick, that's coming here for help? Since she came in, no help, right? She had to take her case herself and so on. But I'm asking the fact that this nurse told me, well, we can't help it because all these beds are taken by foreigners. That was her reply.
Well,
Resources. It comes back to resources
Yeah.
and the fact that
Well-
nurses have to answer
That's the
for
reality.
the
hospital.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, that's the reality, Joan. And of course, you put that into context, into a country context. What's
Yeah,
happening
that's correct.
with our porous borders. And South Africa is taking the lead in providing free health care for certain age groups, for mothers who are pregnant. And so, given the state of health, and I've traveled in many and worked in many African countries, given the dire state of health there, people flock to South Africa
Yeah,
because
yeah.
of
That's
our
right,
health
yeah.
system.
That's
It
right.
sounds, it's paradoxical
right.
Yes,
actually.
yes.
But what I'm trying to say is that the resources, even the investment in building new health facilities, have not kept up with the changing demographics and the population. Foreigners aside, I mean, population growth in South Africa is just exploding.
Yeah, that's right.
So we've not increased the number of facilities. Never mind not increasing the number of doctors and nurses, because there's a shortage of doctors as well. So it's those kinds of issues that, until we manage, and I don't agree with people like one of these politicians who said they'll pull the oxygen off a person who's not a South African. That's just terrible.
Yeah.
But the point is we don't have enough resources for the people in South
So
Africa.
that actually, it boils down to who's on top.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Oh,
It
yeah.
boils down to that because
Always.
my principal used to say, and I will never forget it, that the fish gets rotten from the head.
From the head.
So if the head is rotten,
Yeah.
the body will be rotten.
Yeah, and this is not a campaigning show.
No, it's not,
But
yeah,
I mean,
but
it is a stark reality
Yeah.
that
Sure, but it's sad.
the state of
It
South
is.
Africa
Very
does,
sad.
filter in through almost every area of our lives. First, I don't want to jinx it because I'm grateful to have electricity for the past couple of days.
Oh, yes,
Yes.
thank you, Jesus.
It's been really nice.
Really
really nice.
It's probably
But,
going to be like that.
But,
till the
as we have these
elections.
awareness conversations, it is important, especially now during the season of elections, that people must begin to open up their eyes to
Eyes,
certain
yeah.
things. And you must make the right decisions for our country going forward because it impacts us from the head right down to these simple things. I want to maybe touch on something, one aspect about, your repertoire as a professor. You did a lot of training, as a teacher, you did training of nurses, and Joan mentioned something which was quite interesting. She says some of those nurses that walked into the place, they shouldn't have been nurses.
No,
they should have
definitely
just
not, eh?
yeah. And I remember having a prior conversation with Professor Judy, and she says that she can't teach a person how to be a nurse if they cannot show care in fundamental
If they're not
places
teachable, man.
like their own families. So maybe you can just expand on that, because I think there is with nursing particularly, there is a sifting that does need to take place. I almost think there should be a line afterwards, like you write board exams to be qualified for a certain profession. Like to be a CA, you need to go past a certain level. To be an attorney, you have to go past a certain level. I think nurses should also say, you know what, you've done the stuff, you wrote the exams, but please do something else with your life. So please take us through those types of
I mean nursing's very interesting, and it gives you the world's your oyster when you're a nurse. Unfortunately, I got married and stayed in Africa.
Because a lot of them leave the country, right?
And I must say, talking about training, before I answer your question, Lee, is despite what we're saying, South African nurses are the most comprehensively trained, unfortunately because of our disease burden and our trauma burden in the country. So they're well sought after.
Really?
In countries
in
like
countries,
the UK and in America,
Sweden.
you don't somehow come out as a nurse and a midwife. Now, we train our nurses comprehensively, and because of their experience, because nursing is practice-based, so they learn a lot of the...
We've got a lot of issues in South Africa that helps.
That helps. And that, now, I don't know if it helps, but so nurses are lapped up when they apply. They pass the exams where they go, and they practice in the UK, US, Australia.
That's true,
all over.
And they get more money.
Yeah, and get more money. Oh, let's not go to the money issue. So in just my experience of teaching nurses, nursing is about head, heart, and hands.
That's right.
And for me, the heart is central, and it's actually central to what I'm saying structurally. And if your heart is not in the right place, and in intellectual terms, we talk about the learning domain of affect, the affective learning domain, where you have this disposition to be emotionally attuned to people's needs, whether they're vulnerable or not. You're just emotionally attuned to people. And that starts in a home environment. Whether you grow up with your grandmother, whether you grow up with other children, with siblings, it starts there, the basics of caring. Absolutely, the basics of caring, the basics of sharing, the basics of knowing when somebody is hurt and what to do, isn't it? And I have found, and I've got no evidence, no research evidence around that, but experientially, the nurse who doesn't come in with the fundamentals of caring, it's very difficult for them to teach professional caring. They just don't get it. They don't get it.
They just don't care.
They just don't care. And fortunately, I was very privileged to teach groups of nurses where those basics were in place. So, and that's why I could immediately detect. And when you actually go into that nurse's background, you can see where the pitfalls were in the upbringing.
That's right.
Yeah. And so affective learning has got 3 levels, at the risk of sounding now like a professor. But the first level is just being aware. Being aware of what your patient's needs are, being aware of being with somebody in the shop and seeing the person is turning pale and about to collapse. Just that awareness.
And that's what I'm pausing at, because you were complaining about the fact that people just are not aware of the elderly. They're not aware of someone's distress and
that's
pain.
what I'm
So those are the red flags that I'm saying. It's like you shouldn't have actually gone through
I
the rest of the
want you to interrupt. Carry on there, please, because I like that.
That's the first
and
level.
so it's not, and so the medical people and the nursing scientists out there, it's not just about the heart. When you have that awareness, you must connect the dots. You must be able to say what is going on with this person. So you should be able to offer an analgesic to a patient before he's writhing in pain.
Yeah.
Leaving patients in
Yeah.
pain is just unacceptable. And so those are the things that make nurses or where they show themselves as being compassionate. So when you have that, you have compassion, you have empathy, and that is sufficient for you to show a caring attitude.
That's correct, yes.
You know?
And that speaks volumes, right?
Yeah.
Speaks volumes that where you come from, the background, your upbringing, all that,
You've
the
got
care.
to start caring
you've got
there.
To, you've got to
care.
In your community, if you don't have children and you were young, a teenager or
Absolutely.
someone that is in nursing, it's just that care. It's just that.
And I think we in South Africa, we've got a very long way to go.
Yes.
Our family structures have disintegrated, and
that's-
so this
that's
can't be
true.
addressed in the next 10, 15 years even. If you look at the degree of anger and aggression in our country,
it's a
that
fact.
doesn't bode well
Oh, what's a fact.
for a caring spirit. It doesn't.
and the racism that is going with it.
Yeah.
You know, you are actually cared for via the color of your skin. Or I don't know how to put it, but if you are a brown person and you go to a hospital where there's predominantly black, it's almost like they speak the language to you that you don't understand. So now if you can't speak back, then you are treated.
Yeah.
Oh, it brings tears to my eyes because those are the type of things.
Yes. And unfortunately, because I worked in apartheid, it was very similar then.
Yes, it's just flipped.
And from a personal perspective, I got into a lot of trouble. If I reflect on my days when you had to go to the matron's office and you knew you were in trouble, was when I didn't agree with the doctor treating a particular patient because the doctor was this color and the patient was another color.
Yeah.
And to think that you would get into trouble for that. And I think
Yes.
too few nurses today speak up for their patients.
Yes.
Yeah.
Too few.
Yeah.
And maybe because they're not even aware that they don't know they must speak up.
And maybe
Yeah.
they're scared. Maybe they're
Scared too.
scared.
Intimidation is
It's
huge.
intimidation because of the top structure. You
Absolutely.
understand what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Hence, I'm saying if we want to see a change in this country, we have to change the top structure. That is bottom line. That is
Yeah.
what it is.
Yeah, it
You
is.
know,
Yes.
and so
I wonder if you might go to some of the comments.
I
Joan,
want to
and
know.
then,
That's what I was
I
gonna
want to
do.
just also, I want to kind of cue this here because I found this very interesting, and I have no doubt that you'll find it interesting too. The complexity of the male and the female nurses, because we're speaking about nursing as a profession
Yeah.
purely from a female perspective. But I found it very interesting the
Yeah, with
introduction
males, yeah.
or the emergence of more male
Yeah.
nurses and how that has caused some kind of differentiation. I found it very interesting that they lean towards the management positions, and I found it more interesting that they lean towards the administrative positions. That was a very interesting conversation. But I think let's just acknowledge some of our people online. Should I go ahead? Or do
yeah,
want
you
to?
go ahead. Thanks.
So we have Sonia Foster, who says, good morning. She greets Prof. Judith. Always awesome to have professionals with us to bring some insight. Rochelle Maloney is just greeting. Camilla Jonathan, good morning, ladies. I'd like to say that the lack of passion equates to the working environment, so it's consensus in SA. Sonia Foster again, I will implement robots trait.
Robots that will
I will implement
that will
robots that
change
change
bedding.
beddings in hospitals so that two nurses at the time don't have to make up one bed. She's also an educator and she works at UJ, so she's trying to be efficient here. Sonia
She's
Foster,
in the robotics.
if public hospitals can let go of manual files, just because opening a file at a hospital can be dreadful.
So
Yes.
true.
Yes, and you can see that resources can often
Yeah.
be used to to have technological improvements, and
Yep.
that might help. Winnie Johnson, who is also a nurse. Good morning, pastors and professor. It is such an important discussion. I wish I could be available on a larger platform like a TV program. The entire country must be reminded of the nurses' plight.
Yeah.
And you know what, Winnie, you can just share far and wide because these conversations do make a difference to someone. Roy Scalz, nursing must reach excellence again. It must be a career and not just a job. That's also good because it says
Yeah.
that they might, what's next for what is the hierarchy of a nurse's
Yeah.
you're a junior nurse, a senior
Yeah,
nurse.
yeah.
I remember you
Right.
guys used to have these
Yeah.
beautiful
Yes.
epaulets
Yes.
that showed seniority
Yes.
and
Yeah.
experience, and I think that's great.
That's no longer there,
No,
right?
it's still
Is
there,
it
but
still?
sadly, and I mean that's also one of the shifts that you can make. That the nurses who really want to make a difference, there's no there's a ceiling that they reach in clinical.
Okay.
Yes, that's what I'm
And
saying.
so they move
There's
out.
no mapping
They
for them.
move out. They do
Yeah.
other things, and typically some of our male nurses have gone on to do, for example, law, because you reach a ceiling and you get out into academia where there is a parallel hierarchy where you can climb and achieve a
Yeah.
different heights,
Interesting,
but
yeah.
you
And
can't
like you've
as a
mentioned,
clinical nurse.
the good nurses also want to go abroad because
Yeah.
they're like, I don't have to deal with this. I am
Yeah.
sought after in another country. Sonia Forster, salute to some nurses that is so passionate and helpful.
Yeah.
You really do find some phenomenal nurses in
Yes,
both
still.
private and public. And then Sonia Forster, just a compliment for Prof. How, Prof, you speak with so much clarity and understanding. Thank you. Jacqueline Prim, which happens to be Dr. Jacqueline Prim, which is Judy's daughter. Perhaps there seems to be more accountability in the private sector with regards to nursing. Okay. I don't know if you are baiting us there, Dr. Jacqueline Prim, but we're just going to leave it at that. And then Sonia Forster, I saw a public hospital a few weeks ago and how nurses sang and prayed together. It warms my heart. That is true. You do get a different sense, especially in communities that are closer to an impoverished demographic. And then Prof really has a comprehensive understanding of the nursing fraternity. This professor has my vote for the Minister of Health.
Yes.
Not a bad
I
idea to
agree.
campaign. And Valencia Watson, people are fighting for free education. How about free education for aspiring nurses who have a passion for nursing but can't afford to study? So that is kind of the energy and of the people that are listening on the show. So I think maybe we can just broach the subject really quickly because I think it's very interesting.
Oh, it is.
And that
About
is of the
the
male,
male-
the
yeah,
dynamic
the
male
male,
and
yeah.
the female nurses.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
tell us what you know about that. And
Yeah, so males make up about 10 to 13% of the nursing category globally. In South Africa, it's about 10.4%.
Yeah.
So you see, it's really marginal. But there has been an increase in the last 20 years or so. And the sense that I get, and this is a function of patriarchy, and it's not just an African thing. You find it in Korea, in China, in Russia, all of those countries, where because of patriarchy, it's layered with power. And so male nurses are able to use their manly power far more efficiently, I think,
Yes.
than female nurses.
Agree.
And I think for as long as we are a patriarchal society, that won't change. So they tend to go far quicker than nurses into management position, and it's facilitated by the powers that be, administration, etc. Now, and sometimes even to the departments of health, the various departments of health. So my colleagues in the Western Cape actually did some research on this, and there's huge unhappiness amongst nurses.
Yeah, there is.
To say it's a female-dominated profession, yet there seems to be an advancement of males much sooner than females. Now, having said that, people who know me will know where I come from. I don't advocate for gender parity in nursing. I think it's the wrong thing to do, but I do advocate for diversity in nursing. Be it gender, however you describe that, be it race, be it culture, because the future of nursing is about diversity and the ability to bring all our ideas and our capabilities together to solve the complexities in health. And men do bring a different perspective to that. And I think the profession must be open to that. But I'm not a plain advocate for gender parity because I think that is the wrong way to go. But for diversity, yes.
Sure.
I just want to
I
add
like
there,
that, eh?
my experience with male nurses was very good.
that's the problem.
Yeah, they
honestly,
and male
they were
masseurs
so-
as well, and male chefs and male nurses. Like males are rocking this.
Yeah.
and
They
we
were so
mustn't,
compassionate and
the whole, remember nursing started as a feminine
Support,
profession.
yeah.
So those are all historical things. And there were indications men are not nurturing. So it's about women must be subservient, nurturing. No, hell no. So bringing males into nursing, I think, could change as long as they stay in nursing.
Yeah.
Be influential to give nursing back its power and its agency in healthcare.
Now, Prof, what will you say is the responsibility of a nurse? See, you come into the profession from this is from Professor Judy, right? What would you say is the responsibility of a nurse?
Yeah. So nurses are responsible for the holistic treatment and care of patients on a continuum from before birth till after death. And I say after death because you deal with the dead body as well.
Right.
In a variety of areas in preventive and promotive health, curative health, and rehabilitative health. That in a nutshell is what nursing responsibilities are. And they do that through a combination by blending their aptitudes intellectually, in the heart, and with the hands.
Yeah, I love it.
And in fact, in the olden days, and if you go to Kimberley where professional nursing
That's
was
right,
born,
yes.
you still say your pledge in a church and
That's
the
right.
nurses'
Wow.
hands are
That's
blessed.
right. That's right.
And that for me is such a profound symbol.
Yes.
Yeah, that
My
is.
sister-in-law was a nurse before. She's retired now. But wow,
Yes.
that respect,
Yeah.
you know.
That's what we want to gain.
That's what we want to see.
And we can.
That's what
It
we
won't-
want to see. It's so nice, and it's nice just to go and just look at them. You know,
Yes.
she had such a lot of compassion and empathy for her patients.
Yeah.
It was amazing. And you know, when I go, I still seek for that because I was exposed to it.
Yes.
Now you look for what you knew, but you don't find
don't
it.
find
You
it.
don't find it.
So true.
And
And
I
it's
I like the heart and the hands part because Here, that's praat met my boek.
Yeah.
But that was a very,
It's a community
poetic
need, so the
response.
community must get behind nurses.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
was
a community
So you
need.
see, and also that this is what I really also want to ask, you know, from myself on the Inside Show. If we as churches can just adopt one hospital
Yeah.
So
and
true,
care
eh?
for
and
them,
paint and just in the painting or go to the children's ward and just ask someone to do, but you actually give the paint and you get the people to paint. You get what I'm
Yes,
saying?
yes,
Yeah.
Just to make the environment a little bit more nicer and smart.
Yes.
And then go in and check and now and then go and clean and so on. So the nurses don't have to do all these things on their own, you know. So I want to just say we really truly appreciate all the years of your service and that you still have the passion to still train others, you know, because you see the need.
Yeah.
You could have given up. You could have gone to another country, you know, and I'm sure it was in the mind, maybe but you want to see the professionalism, the compassion coming back to South Africa per se,
Yes.
you know, because South Africa is one of the most trained nurses, if I may put it that way.
Yeah.
If I read it correctly.
Correct.
But you said it also earlier. You did say that. So I would really want to ask, guys, let's not just be negative. And we know we live in a negative society, but let's just be positive. Also with nurses, you know, if you treat someone with respect, you're going to get respect in return.
So true.
And that is what I want to ask from Talk With Joan's side. Let's just respect one another and do for them what they also really need. Right? So I don't know whether you have something else there, Lee?
I enjoyed the conversation. Thank you so much, Prof, for coming through. I really do appreciate it and giving us such a clear insight
Oh, I love it.
into. Obviously, it was just a bird's eye view because we
yes.
couldn't delve into. We need a series to delve into all the ins and outs of the profession. But I particularly enjoyed your response to Joan's question about what is it that a nurse does. I found it very sincere,
Oh, I love it,
heartfelt,
I love it.
and it wasn't vague. It was actually quite poetic, and I appreciated that very much. Personal testimony from my side is that I have a nurse in our family. Her name is Enid, and Enid, throughout her profession and her life, has just remained a nurse. So she's one of those nurses who are essentially
Have
born
the
to be
heart.
nurses. Yes.
Yeah.
And she's very sought after, even in this day and age of her life, because she's
Experienced.
she has arrived at the place of retirement. And I remember when I first became acquainted with Professor Judy Bruce was when my aunt had told me, do you know that Judy Bruce was my lecturer?
Wow.
Wow.
And what she said about Judy then was that she was tough and that she drilled them and that she was very stringent and competent. And I'm putting those two things together because I'm saying is that that's what you sowed into the industry.
Yes.
And if I look at my aunt, even in this day and age, she remains fundamentally a nurse and an excellent one because she's still sought after in the hospitals. So thank you so much for honoring us with your years of service and your insights. We
But
appreciate
Prof,
it.
I just my last question, right? I'm asking it for another nurse, and I'm serious. I'm serious. What would you say if there is something that nurses goes through and they see the problem? What can they do if they can't talk to their senior, someone that is a little bit higher? How do you address problems? How can they address problems?
So there are forums, or there's supposed to be forums. I'm suspecting she's in a hospital or he's
She's
in
in
a
a hospital, yeah.
There are forums in the hospital that you can speak to. And then nurses do belong to trade unions and organizations. And if those routes don't work, I always say go to the media in a very subtle way and be anonymous, because we live in a very, very vengeful society.
That's right,
Yeah.
yes. And
So use the avenues available at his or her disposal, and then, but really anonymity is very important these days.
yeah, because you see, especially if it's a trainee that comes in, who's working her way up to become a doctor, very passionate. So I would really, that's why I'm asking the question, because really it's a family member of mine, very passionate for her patients. Want to see that, my patient's going to get better.
Yeah.
That compassion, man. And so I just like that, but the peers or the environment that she's in is a little bit
Hostile.
it's not so nice. So yeah, Vi?
Well, I too have cousins that's in the nursing, a male and a female in New Zealand. And so this is a shout out to them, appreciation to them, and cousins here in South Africa that was in the profession, and aunt as well. So yes, we appreciate what they're doing. And we want to thank you as well, Judy, for the insight that you gave us into nursing, the passion that I can still feel.
Oh yeah,
It's coming from you.
It's from
for
1976.
nursing. From 1976, wow. I want to do, I was just burning to ask, how old are you now?
I'll be 70 at my next birthday.
Never.
This
You
year.
don't
this
look
year.
a year older than 60.
are you serious?
Yeah. You look very good.
You
Just work back. Just count back.
Yeah,
So
I'm
let me
thinking,
now.
is it for real? Are you making
No,
a joke?
I was
or
the
is it
whole
serious?
time when she spoke about
67.
1973 already.
Yeah.
I thought, no, this lady is.
Either her maths isn't mathsing
I'm
or
working
Yeah,
on
I
my maths.
can't
Yeah.
count.
So I just want to say
Yeah,
this
you are
quote
looking
quickly.
very good. Very.
Nurses dispense comfort, compassion, and caring without even a prescription. This is what Val Sainsbury says. And I think on that note, I just want to say thank you to all the nurses.
Yes.
Thank you to all the nurses
In the
out
whole
there.
world.
We got your back.
Yeah,
Yeah, we
we
appreciate
with you.
Yeah.
Shout out to my niece. You keep on going on, girlfriend. You're going to make it, and you're going to make it
Yes.
strong.
Yeah.
That is to Camellia. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Your last comments, Prof, and then we're going to say ta-ta.
Just a shout out to all the nurses.
Yeah.
For the phenomenal work that you do, and those who are not phenomenal, become phenomenal. And a shout out to our leadership. Stop calling us the backbone and treating us like the coccyx. We need
love that.
more investment in nursing. Thank you.
Yes.
Amen. We salute. Thank you so much, beloved. Go in the peace of the Lord. We love you. God loves you best. Enjoy your day. Mwah.
In the shadow, as I look upon my life, in the shadow, there's a passion inside. Heaven knows I'm living my dream.